A young woman sits in her car, staring at her phone. $100,000 a year. The number she spent years chasing. The number she believed would change everything. The number most Americans still think means you've made it. And yet, within months, she's lying awake at night wondering where all the money went. No luxury vacations. No reckless spending. No crazy mistakes. Just a six-figure salary that somehow isn't enough. So here's the question nobody wants to ask. If $100,000 can't buy the American dream anymore, what number actually can? Because the answer is about to expose one of the biggest financial illusions in modern America. An illusion so powerful that millions of people are earning more money than ever before, while feeling poorer than ever before. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the finish line moved, who moved it, and why millions of hardworking Americans are still running toward a version of success that no longer exists. Before we begin, I want to say something important. If you've ever looked at your paycheck and wondered, where did all the money go? If you've ever felt like you're working harder than ever but somehow getting further behind. If you've ever felt confused, frustrated, or even a little embarrassed because your income looks good on paper but your bank account tells a different story, then this channel was made for you. Because every week, we're going to break down the real stories behind money, inflation, taxes, retirement, social security, cost of living, wealth building, and the economic changes that are quietly affecting millions of ordinary people. No financial jargon. No fake gurus. No unrealistic promises. Just honest explanations of what's really happening to your money and what it means for your future. So if that sounds valuable to you, take a second and subscribe. Because the next video might explain a financial change, government update, retirement rule, tax shift, or economic trend that could directly affect your life and your wallet. Subscribe now, and I'll see you in the next one. Somewhere right now, a young woman is sitting in her car outside her apartment, staring at a number on her phone screen. $100,000. That's what her offer letter says. That's the number she dreamed about in college, the number her parents whispered about like it was a kind of magic, the number that was supposed to mean she'd finally made it. She cries in that parking lot. Not from sadness. From relief. From a feeling that the struggle is finally over. She has no idea what's coming. Because somewhere between the moment that number lands in her bank account and the moment she actually tries to live on it, something strange happens. The dream quietly, invisibly, starts to fall apart. And nobody warned her. Nobody warns any of us. This is the hidden truth behind $100,000 in America. And once you understand it, you will never look at a paycheck the same way again. For decades, six figures was the line. The line between struggling and surviving. The line between surviving and thriving. It was the number etched into the American psyche as proof that you had escaped. Escaped the grind, the scarcity, the fear of an unexpected bill. $100,000 a year used to mean a house with a yard. A car you didn't have to think about. Vacations that weren't agonized over for months. It used to mean freedom. So when people hit that number today, they expect the same thing their parents got. The same relief. The same ease. And instead, they get something else entirely. They get a tightness in the chest at the end of every month. They get a quiet, creeping confusion. Where did it go? I make six figures. Why does it feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water? This isn't in their imagination. This isn't bad budgeting, or failure, or some personal flaw they need to fix with a spreadsheet and a little more discipline. This is something much bigger. Something almost nobody talks about out loud, because admitting it means admitting that the rules quietly changed while everyone was still playing by the old ones. Let's start with the part that hits first, the part you feel before you even understand it. The government takes its cut before you ever see a cent federal income tax. Social Security and Medicare withholding. State income tax, depending on where you live. By the time all of that is finished carving up your paycheck, a person earning $100,000 can easily lose a quarter of it, sometimes closer to a third, before a single bill gets paid. That number on the offer letter was never the real number. It was a number designed to feel bigger than it actually is. Now picture what's left. Call it $70,000, maybe $75,000 in actual spendable income. That's the number you're really living on. And here's where the second hidden truth comes crashing in. The dollar doesn't buy what it used to. Not even close. Think about that for a second, because it's easy to say and almost impossible to feel until you live it. $100,000 today does not carry the same weight, the same power, the same purchasing strength as $100,000 carried 15 years ago. Inflation has been quietly, relentlessly eating away at the value of every dollar you earn. Economists who study this will tell you that the same $100,000 salary that felt comfortable a decade or so ago now behaves more like $70,000 used to behave. And if you go back further, to the early 2010s, that same income used to stretch like it was worth far more than it is today. In other words, you didn't get a bigger salary. The salary just got smaller while you weren't looking. And the things eating away at that shrinking dollar are not luxuries. They are not vacations or designer bags or nights out. They are the absolute basics of staying alive and sheltered. Housing is the biggest one, and it is brutal. The median mortgage payment in this country has climbed past $2,000 a month, driven by home prices that refuse to come back down to earth and interest rates that have made borrowing painfully expensive. If you're renting instead of owning, you are not escaping this. In many major cities, rent alone can devour a third or more of that $100,000 income before you've bought a single groceries bag. Then there's health insurance, which keeps climbing year after year regardless of how healthy you are or how careful you've been. Even when an employer covers part of it, the worker's share for family coverage has crept up into the thousands of dollars annually, a quiet tax nobody calls a tax. Add childcare, if you have children. Add the cost of a car payment in a country where public transportation in most places simply isn't a real option. Add groceries that cost noticeably more than they did just a few years back. None of these are indulgences. These are the floor. These are what it costs simply to exist, to get to work, to keep a roof overhead, to keep a child fed and safe. So when you stack it all up, the math becomes almost cruel. Take that $75,000 left after taxes. Subtract rent or a mortgage that alone can claim $24,000 a year or more. Subtract health insurance costs. Subtract a car payment and insurance. Subtract groceries that have crept higher every single time you walk into the store. Subtract childcare if it applies to you. By the time you reach the bottom of that list, the supposed dream income has shrunk down to something that barely resembles a dream at all. This is why studies that try to measure the real, after-tax, after-cost of living value of $100,000 across American cities keep landing on the same uncomfortable conclusion. In some of the most expensive cities in the country, that headline salary functions more like $60,000 or $70,000 once you actually account for what it costs to live there. Even in some of the more affordable big cities, $100,000 only behaves like roughly $90,000 once taxes and local costs are factored in. There is nowhere left in this country where six figures simply means easy living. Nowhere. And it isn't just the coastal cities anymore, the ones everyone already expects to be expensive. Even in the supposedly affordable middle of the country, the cushion has gotten thinner every single year. The typical full-time worker in America earns far less than $100,000 a year, which means the person holding that six-figure salary is already standing well above most of their neighbors, their co-workers, their extended family. And yet they still feel the squeeze. That contradiction alone should tell you something. If the person doing better than almost everyone around them still feels like they're drowning, the problem was never about effort. It was never about deserving more. It was about a system that quietly raised the cost of simply existing faster than it raised what people are paid to survive in it. Think about what that number actually represented a generation or two ago. A parent or grandparent earning that same income, in real terms, could often buy a home outright with room to spare, raise a family on a single salary, and still set money aside for retirement without much agony. Today, that same dollar figure, adjusted for everything that's changed, doesn't come close to buying that life. You are not failing to recreate your parents' financial life because you're less capable than they were. You are failing to recreate it because the floor shifted under both of you, and only one of you got told. And here is the part that makes this truth so painful. It isn't loud. It isn't a single dramatic moment where you lose your job or your home. It's quiet. It's the kind of pain that sneaks in at 11 at night while you're staring at a banking app, wondering how the balance got so low again. It's the embarrassment of earning what looks, on paper, like success, while feeling, in your chest, like you're failing. It's smiling when someone says, "Wow, 6 figures, you must be doing so well," while your stomach quietly twists, because you know the truth and they don't. This is the loneliest part of the whole thing. Because nobody talks about it. Talking about money in America still carries shame, still feels like admitting weakness. So people suffer this quietly, alone, assuming they are the only ones not managing it right. They assume there's something wrong with their habits, their choices, their discipline. They blame themselves for a structural shift that was never their fault to begin with. But it gets worse before it gets better, because there's a second trap layered right on top of the first one. It's called lifestyle creep, and it is sneaky in the cruelest way possible. When that number hits 6 figures, something shifts in the brain. You start to feel like you've arrived. You start to feel like you deserve the nicer apartment, the newer car, the dinners out, the things that signal to the world and to yourself that you made it. None of these choices are wrong on their own. But added together, quietly, month after month, they expand to fill every bit of breathing room that extra income created. The raise that should have built a safety net instead got absorbed into a slightly more comfortable, slightly more expensive version of the exact same financial tightrope you were walking before. And layered on top of that is something even more invisible. Comparison. Scrolling through a phone and watching people who look like they're living effortlessly, vacationing constantly, buying homes, driving the car you want, while you sit there earning what should be considered a great income and still feeling behind. That comparison isn't harmless background noise. It chips away at self-worth. It makes a genuinely strong income feel like a personal failure, when in reality, it's simply colliding with an economy that has fundamentally changed the rules. What makes this even crueler is that you rarely see the full picture behind those highlight reels. The person posting from the beach might be drowning in debt to fund that single weekend. The couple showing off their new house might be one missed paycheck away from real trouble, leveraged to the edge just to look like they've arrived. But none of that gets posted. Only the smiling photo gets posted. So you sit there comparing your honest, complicated, real financial life against someone else's carefully edited highlight reel, and you always lose that comparison, because it was never a fair fight to begin with. This is how an entire generation of genuinely successful people end up feeling like frauds. Earning more than their parents ever did. Working harder, often smarter, than the generation before them. And still lying awake at night with a knot in their stomach, wondering what they're doing wrong. Nothing. That's the answer nobody gives them. Nothing. They are doing nothing wrong. They are simply the first generation asked to build a life on a foundation that was quietly removed without anyone telling them it was gone. Here is the truth underneath all of this, the truth that this video exists to say out loud, clearly, without flinching. If you are earning $100,000 a year and you still feel stretched, anxious, behind, confused about where the money goes, it is not because you are bad with money. It is not because you lack discipline. It is because the economic ground beneath this income shifted dramatically, and almost nobody updated the story we keep telling about what 6 figures is supposed to mean. The number stayed the same. The world around the number did not. So what do you do with this truth, now that you know it? You don't collapse into despair, and you don't pretend the problem doesn't exist either. You do something far more powerful. You stop measuring your life against an outdated promise, and you start building a real, honest relationship with the income you actually have. That starts with knowing, in real numbers, what your true take-home income is after taxes, not the fantasy number on the offer letter. It means tracking, brutally honestly, where every dollar of that take-home pay actually goes, especially the fixed costs that quietly consume the most: housing, insurance, transportation, debt. It means understanding that lifestyle creep is not a personal failing so much as a psychological trap built into how income increases feel, and protecting against it by deciding, in advance, that a portion of every raise goes straight into savings or investments before your spending habits ever get the chance to expand around it. It means location matters enormously, more than almost any other financial decision you'll make, because $100,000 in one part of the country can behave like a completely different number depending on the cost of housing where you choose to live. It means treating debt, especially high-interest debt, as the silent thief it really is, because every dollar paying off interest is a dollar that will never work for your future. It also means having the courage to have honest conversations about money with the people closest to you, even when those conversations feel uncomfortable. Talk to your partner about what things actually cost. Talk to a close friend about the real number on your bank statement instead of the performance you put on for everyone else. The shame around money survives because of silence. The moment you say the true number out loud to someone you trust, you often discover they're carrying the exact same quiet fear, and suddenly it isn't quite so heavy anymore. And maybe most importantly, it means giving yourself permission to stop performing wealth for an audience and start building actual financial security for yourself, quietly, steadily, without needing anyone else's approval or comparison as the measuring stick. Because here's what's true, even with everything you just learned. $100,000 is still a genuinely strong income. It is still more than most people in this country will ever earn. It still gives you tools, options, leverage that a great many people do not have. The problem was never the number itself. The problem was the story attached to the number, a story written in a different economic era, a story that quietly stopped being true while everyone kept repeating it like gospel. So if you are the person sitting in your car right now, looking at that number on your phone, crying tears of relief, let this be the thing that protects you from the confusion that's coming. The relief is real. The accomplishment is real. But the ease you were promised, the ease your parents might have had at this same number, that ease isn't guaranteed anymore. It has to be built, deliberately, on purpose, with eyes wide open to how the world actually works today instead of how it used to work. And if you are the person already living inside that confusion, already feeling the quiet shame of earning well and still struggling, hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not bad with money. You are living through one of the most significant, least discussed shifts in what income actually means in this country, and the fact that nobody warned you doesn't make it your fault. There is a particular kind of grief in realizing the version of success you were promised as a child doesn't exist anymore, not in the way it was described to you. Let yourself feel that grief for a moment. Then let it go, because grief that calcifies into shame helps no one, and shame is exactly what keeps people quiet, isolated, and stuck believing this is somehow a personal failing rather than a shared reality playing out in millions of households at once, behind millions of closed doors, behind millions of smiling faces that say, "I'm doing great," while their stomach quietly twists. The hidden truth behind $100,000 in America isn't that the number is fake, or that success doesn't matter, or that hard work doesn't pay off. The hidden truth is simpler and harder all at once. The finish line moved. Quietly, steadily, while millions of people kept running toward where it used to be. Now you know where it actually is. And knowing that changes everything about how you run the rest of this race. Not because the race got easier. It didn't. But because you're no longer running it blind, blaming yourself for a distance that someone else quietly stretched out in front of you. You're running it with your eyes open, your number understood for what it really is, and your sense of self-worth finally, rightfully, separated from a figure that was never the whole truth to begin with.